Do you often get blamed by your wife or your girlfriend for not having enough time for her or your kids or not taking them places for all kinds of stuff? While in reality, you're away at work, you're providing for the family, or you're having a rest after a hard night's work or hard day's work, or whatever the case might be, right? But when she blames you, the first emotion that you get is, hey, how can you? How dare you blame me for that while I'm providing for you? And you feel totally, not understood, and you feel like torn apart. And you feel that the person who's supposed to be the one who gets you the most, because she sees how hard and tough your life is, right? And that person is the one who kind of understands you the least. And over time, you feel that her demands start growing, and you start neglecting yourself even more. And then a couple of years down the line, probably your relationship just falls apart. But guess what? The same patterns repeat themselves. In all of your relationships, you get blamed. And then, ultimately, the only refuge that you find from all of that is either being with your buddies and having a few drinks, or escaping into doing some sports or doing some gaming or whatever, because you have developed this understanding that the life is not just, it's not fair. You as a man will always get blamed for stuff, no matter how hard you work. But guess what? Things can be different. You mightn't realize that. That might seem like a pipe dream. But you can have the following scenario. Imagine your wife or your girlfriend says something to you along those same lines, like, why couldn't you do this or that or the other, right? But instead of allowing that emotion to ignite and make you angry and resentful and all of those things, you wouldn't get that inside of you. Imagine how interesting that would be, right? If you could just approach the whole situation in a pragmatic way and tell her, yes, honey, I can see why you would say that. I know how you feel. If I were you, if I were in your shoes, in your situation, I would probably feel the same way. Yeah, but let me tell you, the way I see it is the following, right? And then a normal conversation would ensue. Maybe in the very beginning, while she is not used to it, to the new you, she would still try to kind of fight and argue, but upon the fifth or 10th such attempt, she would also become a bit calmer, and she would be able to look at it from a different perspective, and talk things through. And then all these crazy arguments that would always lead to fights and not talking to each other for a few days, and you just, escaping in your man cave, none of that would happen. You would have a normal conversation, and both of you would get something out of it. She would learn to see a bit more of your perspective. You would also see her perspective, and perhaps you would see certain things that you could adjust in your daily routine, make decisions in a different way, maybe, so that you compromise more. Both of you would get the best out of that situation. How interesting that would be. It would be very interesting, because that's exactly the way a normal, realistic relationship is supposed to happen and function. This unrealistic dream of this rosy relationship where everything is 100% fine all of the time, and the two people just love each other, they're head over heels with each other, and they don't say anything bad to one another, This kind of relationship does not exist. A real relationship is a relationship where the two parties have to sometimes, argue, have to disagree, have to analyze the situation, and have to try and see the situation with each other's eyes from the other person's perspective. That's how a relationship grows, develops, and that's how you can spend your entire life together and grow old together. And that's amazing. We don't have too many such examples in real life because, quite frankly, a lot of the relationships that we know have gone down the same path. People argue, get resentful, and then sometimes you either have the relationship just, fall apart, or two strangers living under the same roof, basically, right? And then cheating and all that kind of stuff. But the moral of the story is that it's all about that emotion inside of you that forces you to become resentful, angry, and leaves you with no other choice but to be mad and just run away and not be able to tolerate that unfairness. But if you wouldn't have that emotion inside of you, if you could brush it all off, forget about the unfairness or whatever, but just analyze the situation for what it is and try and see the situation from the other person's perspective, everything would change. And I know of tools that can accomplish that. I've changed myself thanks to those certain approaches in how therapy is done. And I've done tons of sessions. I've undergone tons of sessions myself, and I've changed a great deal. And it's an amazing change, and life is so much better if you no longer have that resentful emotion inside of you, that anger, all of those things that just make you lose your mind and not be able to look at these situations in a calm way.